But I have to tell you, even if he is indicted, he will be indicted. In New York, you can indict a ham sandwich. And in New York City, you can convict a ham sandwich because the jury pool is so unfair. But if he is indicted, even if he's convicted, he can run for president, and he can run for president from prison. He could even serve as president from prison.
Wow.
Alan Dershowitz, the one-time impeachment lawyer for Donald Trump, said on Sunday that the former president will be able to get reelected in 2024 and run the country from prison if he is convicted. During this interview with the conservative news channel Newsmax, Dershowitz will go on to say that George Soros is to blame for the Trump indictment, and as, quote, a proud, deeply committed Jew and Zionist himself, he is inoculating people from being labeled anti-Semitic if they attack Soros. This wasn't the only example of victim mentality from Trump supporters. I'll get back to that later. Until then, notably absent, at least as of this recording, is a statement from the likes of former UN ambassador and South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, a presidential hopeful. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis brought up George Soros as well when asked about Trump possibly being indicted, more blaming others over Trump. But there's one 2024 presidential candidate who has something to say.
Okay, it's now 2004. Bush is the US president. Dick Cheney is the vice president. John Kerry's running for president of the United States. There's a ministerial campaign finance violation that normally would have either gone with a slap on the wrist or no notice at all, that is instead criminally prosecuted in a way that prevents John Kerry from running in that election. Be honest with yourself. Look inside and ask yourself what any progressive, any liberal, frankly, any American would have said at the time. That it was wrong. Full stop. And you know what? They would have been right.
Vivek Ramaswamy is an entrepreneur. He spoke at CPAC this year and, as I mentioned, is a 2024 presidential hopeful from Ohio. And I really don't like this dude, but me merely admitting that will have someone saying that it would keep me from applying fair standards to him as I would to anyone else. And what you heard was him using a hypothetical, like if Republicans in 2004 had used a campaign finance technicality to arrest then candidate John Kerry while Bush and Cheney were in power, liberals would have cried foul, and rightfully so, in order to explain why Trump should be above the law, and for Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg to reconsider this action. This isn't by accident. He knows, like we all know, that there's real-life examples of Republicans trying to prosecute Democrats for crimes. In fact, we need only to look at one family, the Clintons, for that proof. So I'm not going to go through all of the baggage from this couple because it's a lot. Too much. Plus, I would have to avoid touching that blue dress. Gross. But if Bill Clinton would have committed perjury during testimony for the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal, the GOP would have charged Bill with a crime, in addition to impeaching him, which they did, and they were right to do so. And Hillary, come on. Benghazi, she was investigated. If they would have found something, they would lock her up. Still, Repubs chant that. Still. They even said it to Vice President Kamala Harris the other day. But if Vivek Ramaswamy wants to conveniently forget all of that and pretend like Republicans were merciful and that this is just a campaign finance technicality, like if Republicans could prosecute Dems on what he would consider bogus charges, they wouldn't? Get out of here. Vivek will go on to say that he held a press conference following his South Carolina speech. He called on GOP donor class favorites Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley to join him at 9 a.m. this morning in calling on the Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg to abandon the political persecution through prosecution of the 45th president. I'm sure Haley and DeSantis will say something eventually, or else Trump supporters will call them weak if that isn't happening already. However, Trump's loss is their gain. And Vivek Ramaswamy doesn't have to also believe the other nonsense we've heard and will continue to hear about, the Trump indictment is Dems and the Fed arresting political opponents with partisan charges. They're only doing this to Trump because he's a presidential frontrunner. And, quote, if 45's name were John Smith, Alvin Bragg would not be bringing this case. And I gotta pause right there because there it is. Since Trump is rich and powerful and a politician, Bragg should just let him slide like he does with other criminals. That isn't the take they think it is. Whatever. Ramaswamy doesn't even have to believe it. He just needs to say it. But he should apply the same standards as he would to anyone else. This Tennessee governor knows that he dressed in drag when he was younger, but it didn't keep him from passing anti-drag legislation. You can find a link for this video in the description below. For more of my content, look for me on my YouTube channel called We Gonna Be Alright, or click on the Jeff Wiggins hashtag. And as always, my architect knows Japanese.